Working with investors has been the reason I took my business full time. I specialized in working with a house hack and live and flip investor strategy. That was my buyer pool. That's what I advertised to the entire time. And the best part of that is I had to build up a smaller client base to have the same results as some of my colleagues that are working with retail buyers, because their clientele is buying and selling a home once every 7 to 11 years. My clientele ideally is at least buying a house a year. So I don't have to have nearly as large of a clientele. My flippers are doing multiple deals a year. Some of my buy and hold investors are buying multiple deals a year. So if you're able to get into the investment space in real estate, you can really supercharge your business. Yes, you have to learn a couple new skills, but if you want to be a successful business owner, I don't like the excuses of, oh, I don't like working with investors because there's so much work. Well, this is real estate brokerage. It's going to be a lot of work. Choose the work you want to do.
Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. And today we have Mr. Chris Lloyd. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today, Jason?
I am great. I am excited to have you on here, man. I met you probably a year or so ago, last year at a local event we were both at, and we connected a little bit there. But then here recently, really, I mean, from when we're recording this in the last 2 weeks, I got to see you on stage at a local event that we were both at, the Trig event, and it was a room full of, 150 people, and you took to the stage, and we'll get into kind of your story and how you are, you're very young relative to folks, at your experience level, but with that youth, you took the stage as if you were a 30-year vet in the real estate space, and you had a lot of confidence, and you told your story. I was very impressed with it, and again, that's what's led us here to this podcast. So before we get into all that, let me throw it over to my man JJ for JJ's Joke of the Week. Take it away, buddy.
What kind of key opens a banana? A monkey.
All right. That's my little comedian, Chris. So he has never, of course, this stuff means nothing to him. He's 9, but he's never listened to a full episode. But every week, he says, put on my joke, because he wants to hear his joke at the beginning of every episode.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Funny. Well, but Chris, like I said, met you a while back, about a year ago. You've got your hands in a lot of different areas of real estate. Primarily, you're a broker. You're a real estate agent. Have a team under you there. We'll get into all that. But you're also a real estate investor, and you've done a lot in a short amount of time. And we'll talk about your real estate ventures, but to be able to do what you've accomplished and build the confidence and everything around that, there has to be a major mindset component here, right? When I was 27, I had just started in our corporate career, and I was very immature and had no vision of entrepreneurship or, where things, it was just go to work, build up the ladder like everybody else. So it's refreshing to see somebody that has had the light bulb come on so early in life, and there's just so much runway ahead of you. So I can't wait to hear kind of what sparked all that, what motivated, what your path has looked like so far, and where you're going with it. So with that, what I like to do is turn it over to my guests to you do your own introduction. So tell the folks in any way you want who you are, where you're from, and kind of where your story has gone, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, first off. And I'm going to actually take it all the way back to when I was in high school, because that's kind of when I, figured out that I really like this whole business thing, right?
What?
So I was looking for ways to make money in high school. That was one of the first things that I was trying to do. I was very involved in sports and stuff like that, so I didn't have a lot of time. So I worked where I could, but that, work ethic from the sports that I was involved in definitely transferred over to business. Growing up, I did do a lot of travel triathlon, and then I also ran cross country and swam for my high school. But when I was trying to make money, I found this site called DH Gate, where I would buy a bulk load of sunglasses for $1 a piece and sell them in the hallways of the school for $20 a piece. That was where I really started to figure out I enjoyed business. I enjoyed the logistics of it, tracking the inventory, making sure that I had a list of customers that I was going to be following up with and everything. And I had a little mini CRM without knowing about it on a piece of loose leaf paper in my lunchbox. Never had lunch in that lunchbox. It was just full of sunglasses. Got caught with that. School didn't like it, told me I couldn't sell sunglasses, but they were impressed. And they said, as long as you go across the street onto the sidewalk over there, you can carry on with this business. So I did continue it a little bit after that, but then started moving a little bit more into landscaping. I was really passionate about that, really loved the whole landscaping thing. But with all these, side gigs, I decided once I was, phasing out of my competitive sports towards the end of my high school, I got a job at a sales associate, worked my way up to sales manager at a place called East Coast Bicycles. That was where I started getting a feel for what it was like to sell more expensive things other than just cheap sunglasses in the school hallways. I was selling multi-$1,000 Trek bicycles, carbon fiber, to a lot of, bicycle enthusiasts, stuff like that, a very niche product. But I really enjoyed sales. I really enjoyed the business aspect of everything. And so when I decided to go off to college, my main goal was I wanted to own a business. Didn't know what type of business. At the time, I was very into the bicycle shop business, but I just knew I wanted to run a business. And I thought I would go into biology, thinking it would be some type of physical fitness business. And I spoke with my academic advisor the first semester, and he told me, hey, if you're trying to run a business, you need to go get a business degree, not a biology degree. I said, okay, well, that makes sense. So I transferred my major over to economics and business, continued working at the bike shop over the summers. And then while I was in college, I was taking a lot of advice from a lot of different people. And the advice that I was given was get that safe, stable, secure job with, good benefits, stuff like that. So I followed the advice of the people that, I was following. It was a military college, so there was a lot of people that were commissioning into the military, getting federal jobs with good benefits, stuff like that. That's what I was surrounded by, right? I got that job. I started working at Newport Shipyard after graduation because it checked all the boxes of what I was told to go after, and I did not like the job. Loved the people I was working with. I worked for some fantastic people, worked with some great people, but I was not happy with the job. I was not happy with the career trajectory. And I also wasn't happy with the math. And what I mean by that is I did not have sufficient income to put aside for retirement. So I looked into other ways to save up for retirement, read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and everything changed. I reached out to another college alum that was in real estate and asked him, hey, do you know anything about this Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, right? And he said, yeah, that's what I do for a living. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get started? And he just gave me a very simple task. Go buy a house where you live in one side, you rent out the other, reduce your living expenses, and call me back when you've completed that. I said, okay, fair enough. Nice and easy. So I bought the house, and I was a little 2-unit property in Hampton, Virginia, moved into one side, rented out the other. I was living for free right off the bat. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I kind of bought myself a raise. This is great. So I called him up and I said, hey, what's next? He said, do it again in a year and make sure that you take note of anything you messed up on in this purchase. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, stuff's going to go wrong with that property. This is your cost of tuition. Make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. And sure enough, 2 months after I bought my first property, I had a collapsed sewer lateral that I needed to replace. About 80 feet of it. It was expensive. That was the most expensive bill I have seen up to that point in my life. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So I called him up. I said, hey, is this about how much it costs to repair this thing? It was about a $6,000 bill. And he said, yep, that seems about right. And he's like, but how much did you spend on college? And I was like, a whole lot more. He said, how much has that made you? And I was like, well, it got me a job I'm not too happy with, and it's not providing for retirement. He said, well, this will. Consider it your cost of tuition. And that was kind of that flip moment for me. I was like, wow, okay, even if I do mess up in this whole real estate thing, if I'm able to maintain this asset long term, I'm able to provide for my retirement. And then I was already seeing the fact that I could live for free. I cut out my largest living expense, and I was like, light bulb moment. let me get my license and walk other people through how to do this. So I got my real estate license in 2021, started up my business, grew it up to a team, and now I am operating a brokerage owned by David Greene. He was a former podcast host on the Bigger Pockets podcast. He's been featured, in CNN, Forbes, HGTV, stuff like that. And now I'm running the brokerage here in 2026. I've got my team. We are, one of the highest ranked teams in the area. We've got, incredible volume. Extremely blessed for everything we've been able to accomplish, but there's a lot of things along the way that I think we'll dig deeper into as we go through this show. So I'm not going to go too deep into that right yet.
Dude, so much. Already got a page full of notes. Let's go back and kind of work through it. So you mentioned going to, did you go to VMI?
Yes, I did. I went to VMI.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right. And you were surrounded by folks, and I didn't go to VMI. I went to Radford University, but the same logic of go to job. I got the business degree, and then you go to work after that. So I followed that path just like you did. But you mentioned when you got to the shipyard, and I'm always curious. You said you weren't happy. You were doing exactly what you were told to do, right? So was the unhappy, and I know you mentioned like you weren't making enough to put away for retirement and stuff like that, but had you stayed the course there, you would have gotten raises, promotions, stuff like that. So it would have eventually gotten there. Were you not happy ultimately because you didn't have full control over what you were doing?
Absolutely.
Was that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So very early on when I was at the shipyard, I saw that I was performing at a level that was, not to toot my own horn, but proficient compared to a lot of other people that I was surrounded with in the yard in general. And I was like, well, given my performance, I believe that I should be selected for a raise, right? This was kind of my introduction to corporate world, right? And my manager was like, absolutely, you're doing a fantastic job. We're going to recommend you. And HR kicks back and says, hey, we haven't had him for a certain amount of years. Therefore, we can't promote him regardless of how he's performing.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. So if I work this W-2 route, I will be restricted simply by my tenure and not necessarily off my performance. And that was also one of those moments where I was like, if I'm going to be bending over backwards and working hard, I either want to do that for a company that rewards that behavior, or I want to do it for myself.
Yeah.
And I decided to choose the latter.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I suspected that'd be your answer, but that's usually was the same thing for me. Now, I didn't get out right away. I worked my corporate career and moved up the ladder for 17 years. The whole time feeling this sense of like, God, this is not my baby, right? I'm good at it. I'm doing all the right things. I'm making a good income, but it's not mine. I don't have the full authority over really I'm curious to know this too, because at the shipyard, there's a lot of formalities that you have to work. It's very bureaucratic, right? So if you have whatever level of an employee you are, if you have an idea, that idea doesn't really get a chance to go anywhere unless you do have that seniority and you're in that level. You've worked your way up and you're in your 50s and finally have the authority to kind of implement some ideas. So that was always frustrating for me as well. Like, I have ideas. I can see processes that my idea might not work, but at least give me the chance to talk about it and work through it. So I would imagine that's especially if you're an entrepreneur. You want to fix things and solve puzzles and stuff like that. So you mentioned your mentor that kind of gave you very simplistic advice. Go do this, come back and talk to me when you've done it. Go do this, come back and talk to me when you've done it. Did you seek that mentor out, or were you looking, or did it just kind of fall in your lap?
So we got connected because I skipped this part, but towards the end of my college, what I was initially going to do was I was pursuing a career in the United States Secret Service. Right before graduation, I got cut from that pipeline. And then I was applying like crazy to all kinds of jobs. So I reached out to a lot of people in the alum network. For those of you unfamiliar with Virginia Military Institute, there's a very strong, tight-knit alum network. So I was utilizing that to the best of my ability, reaching out to anyone and everyone I could find on LinkedIn that went to be. And I actually had connected with this guy during my job search, and he was just the only guy I knew in real estate. So when I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book and it started talking about real estate investing, I was like, let me go reach back out to that guy that I talked to, months ago when I was looking at, what career path to take and just see if he knows a thing or two about this real estate investing thing. And so I reached back out to him on LinkedIn, scheduled a call with him, and he was very straightforward. Like, he told me exactly what to do, didn't elaborate on it, and told me that he would talk further once I take action because he has walked multiple people through how to do it that never took action. And he was, quite frankly, tired of doing that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, he's where I want to be. So if he tells me to do this thing, I'll do it and just come back and do the next thing.
You're hitting on and I want to stay here for a second because it's so important, and folks listening that are kind of in that mode of like wanting to make a transition, not knowing where to go. You just nailed the biggest hurdle for folks is they do all the research, they do all the reading, listen to all the podcasts or listen to this podcast. They know what to do. They just don't take that action. And you go back to what you were saying, what did you do? You were young, you're in college, you start reaching out to people on LinkedIn, you start trying to connect dots. Well, this person maybe and you send messages that leads to a relationship. You get advice. You don't just say, okay, let me make a note of that. You go and take the action. And we see that. I see that quite a bit as well. I mean, I've tried to mentor a handful of folks and same thing. I always say, when I leave a conversation, go do A, B, C, or just A sometimes. Go do that. Once it's done, let's meet again and talk about it. And most of the time, nobody does, right? So it's refreshing when you do have folks say, okay, let me do that. And it's not that, like, your mentor's advice, that might not be the silver bullet for everybody, but he gave you something to act on. You acted on it. It cost you money through the sewer thing, which was your cost of tuition.
Yep.
I love that analogy. And so it all comes back to action, and you just drilled that. So, yeah.
It absolutely does. And that's one of the things that we talked about this on that Saturday event that we went to. Like, it was very informative, gave the audience a ton of information. But one of the things that I said very early on in my presentation was, this information is fantastic, but it means nothing unless you take action. And one of the exercises we did was we made everybody in the room write down their daily schedule, block out the hours that they had to work, and identify real estate time. What time in the day are you going to be taking daily action steps to move you closer to your goal? That's the first step. When are you going to do it? The next step is, what are you going to do? Well, they just told you what to do all over the presentation. Pick one of those things and move forward with it. One of the things that a lot of people do when they enter into the real estate investing space, they'll go buy a course, right? And I've seen courses for absolutely absurd prices. I know you know of them too, but like, some of these courses are $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. My course was a $5,000 down payment on a primary residence loan, and then a $6,000 sewer line issue that I will not make that mistake again.
Yep.
That was $11,000, and it got me an asset that's going to be able to provide for me in retirement, and its cash flow is absolutely incredible today. So I would much rather pay for experience than I would a course. You don't want to go into this blind necessarily, but you need to go into it accepting the fact you will lose something, you will get knocked down. It's all a matter of making sure that you get back up, pivot, and adjust and move forward with that information, and don't make the same mistake again. Don't be afraid of failure. Run towards it, fall, fail, and get back up and move forward to the next item. It's your process of tuition.
Right. And to your point on courses, there's some great courses out there, but it goes back to, like, you can absorb all that information and not take a bit of action. And you think the course was not a good course because you didn't take the action. So my advice to folks when it comes to courses, don't research and try to find the best course out there. If you've got, say, 20 grand you want to allocate to something out there, my advice is find masterminds or or community groups that you can pay to be a part of that have an educational component to it, right? Now, you got to do a lot of research. You got to vet them out because there's a lot of, scams out there and stuff like that. But find a group or a handful of groups that you can pay a couple grand to be a member of, to join their, once a quarter in-person event, and then start making relationships through that group. Find the people that are, to what you said earlier, doing what you want to do, doing what you aspire to be, and then you find your mentors, your one-on-one mentors, or your little micro groups within that big group through that. So dumping 5, 10, 20 grand on a course, but you haven't proven to yourself you can take action on information like that, it's the biggest waste of money on the planet.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, it's
and back to your point, if you're going to take the action, it may be worth it. There are some courses. I've spent a lot of money on education over the years, especially on the brokerage side of this business. But like you said, where I have spent money on coursework, where I've spent a lot of money on coursework, are for groups, like you said, that meet regularly and hold each other accountable.
Yep.
I'm part of a real estate brokerage and team lead training program. I meet with an individual every other week. I meet with a group of people every single day, and we talk about what we did yesterday, what we're going to do today, and how that's going to get us closer to our year goals, right?
Accountability.
If you have an accountability group to make sure that you're going to take action on things, that little piece right there is more valuable than a lot of people will say. They'll say how much for the information, but the information means nothing unless you do something with it.
And Chris, you know this, that doesn't apply to just business. That's in your personal life too. If you want to get healthier, if you want to go run a marathon and you think you're just going to go from the couch to running a marathon in 6 months on your own with no accountability, nobody to meet with and tell you how to do it and help you program and do all that, good luck. You can do it, but it's going to be a lot easier to be a part of a group that holds you accountable, that requires you to show up. How many miles did you hit this week? How many miles did you run this week? What's your diet looking like? And somebody that's actually, staring you in the face saying, let's go, come on, this is the next step. And when you have that accountability and other people suffering through whatever it is, whether it's business, health, whatever we're talking about, accountability is, I think, there are some lone wolves out there that just put their head down and grind through it. I get it, but
yep.
those are typically exceptions to the norm. So
yeah, no, and it's kind of like, to use an analogy, there are people that will buy a training program and not go to the gym.
Yeah,
that's exactly the exact same thing you have to think about when you're entering into this space is, am I buying a training program that I'm not going to end, right? So you need to figure out the action piece of it too. If you can't figure out the action piece of it, the course is going to be useless. So if you're going to take the course, make sure you have a way to complete it. If you're one of those lone wolves that Jason is talking about and you can just take the action, fantastic. If not, you need to figure out an accountability group. You need to let someone know that you care about and will hold you accountable, that you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and get on you if you don't. That's what most of us do need. Right.
It's sometimes you have to pay for that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you do. And the reason is, well, we'll move on from this topic because I want to get into so much more, but I've got to hit this one point. So in our lending business, right, that's our main focus right now. When we launched that, or when we decided to move forward with that business, we said, okay, we can do it. We know the basics, but we need to hire a consultant or a mentor, somebody that's 10 years ahead of us in the business to do it, to help us kind of hold our hand. So we sought that person out. We dated them. We got to know them, became real good friends with them. And then they didn't offer any type of formal coaching, nothing like that. They'd never done it, but that's the person we wanted to mentor us. And they did not need any money from us, did not. But they were sacrificing time to help us along. But they charged us money and a decent amount of money, and we were willing to pay it because you pay attention to what you pay for. If she had shown up to these weekly calls for free, we're wired in a way where we probably would have still taken the action, but you damn sure better believe, because we're stroking a check every month, a big one, to get this value and have her time, we're going to make sure we get a return on that. And that, a lot of folks, I mean, I've heard people say it to me directly, like, why are you paying to be in these rooms? Or you're paying for friends, or you're paying. Okay, I'm paying because if it was free, then every other person would be in that room and be with this person dragging their time, and half of them aren't going to take a lick of action. There's a reason there's a barrier or a cost of entry, you know? And yeah, so that kind of applies to anything. I just had to throw that out there. You mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is pretty timely because, well, we're over 200 episodes now. I'd say half of my guests have thrown that book out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm one of them. I was heavily influenced, and I'm going to ask you in a minute, you know, what specifically you got from that book. But a couple weeks ago, I had a guest on here that brought the book up, and I said the same thing. Like, man, everybody is influenced. It's crazy that one book has had such an impact on a couple generations here. And that guest said, oh, have you had Sharon on? I was like, oh, I don't know who Sharon is. And said, Sharon Lecter, the author. I said, I thought it was Robert Kiyosaki. Well, he's the face of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad brand, but Sharon Lecter was the author, co-author, and the CEO of that brand for 10, 15 years. And he made the connection. So I'm actually interviewing her tomorrow on the podcast. So that,
nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get into that. But that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, everybody kind of has their own takeaway from it, or series of takeaways. What was so impactful about that book for you, if you can nail it down to one specific thing?
It would be the passive income side. That was the thing that really attracted me to it. Now, my position on passive income has changed over the years from what I was initially drawn into with that. But that is ultimately what threw me down this whole real estate rabbit hole, was the passive income side of things. Make sure you buy more assets than liabilities, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And that's I remember my thought with it when I was reading it. I just couldn't stop thinking, I want to be the rich dad, right? I want to be rich dad. I want to be the one being the mentor to all these people and teaching them how to do this. And so how do I become rich dad? Through all the things you just said. But yeah, it's a great book. And if folks are listening and have not read that book yet, as much as it's been mentioned on this podcast and thousands of others, go out there and get that book and read it. That's a great starting place. So, all right. So you buy that duplex, and then you learned a lot through it, but now it's great cash flow, which is a great point in itself. All of our early deals, when we were just getting in, most of them had some major headaches with them, right? Like things we could not have seen. And that just gave us the knowledge of, oh, this is the norm. There, we can underwrite and plan for so much stuff, but things are going to go wrong. And that adversity, rep after rep after rep, it has just shaped us, and I'm sure it's doing the same for you, to be like, okay, they're all going to be hard. I know how to deal with hard things. And when they're not hard, that's great. That's just icing on a good cake. But typically in real estate, time cures most of the adversity you're going to face. Would you believe that or agree with that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're cash flowing now on that first bad deal or good deal, but you have some adversity on it. From there, it sounds like you're fully immersed. What was the tipping point or the point in which you said, I no longer want to pursue this career, so I'm going to put in my 2 weeks and leave? What year, where were you at with real estate at that point?
That's a great question. So I bought the property in 2021, and it was pretty immediate that I realized I just put $5,000 down on this property and I'm living for free. The next best alternative to this living situation was going to run me about $14,000 a year for rent. So in my head, I was like, with $5,000, I just bought myself a $14,000 a year raise because I'm living for free. I don't have those expenses anymore. And I was like, let me just save that money and go do it again next year. And so as I was saving up that money, I was just doing the math on it and looking at the long-term projections of, 3% year over year. Let's just assume that that's what's going to happen over the course of 30 years. I started looking at that math and I was like, holy smokes, this is absolutely powerful that it can turn into that in 30 years. And like I said, I started down this route for retirement. I was doing it because I wasn't getting retirement for the shipyard, so I wanted to invest in real estate so that I could have some assets to retire on. And I did the math and I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I decided to get my license in June of 2021. It was either June or July, I can't remember. And I had a real rough start on the agent side of things. I was prospecting a ton, I was preaching the house hack gospel, you can live for free, do this kind of stuff with almost nothing to show for it for about 6 months. And I finally had one client hit me up that I went to college with, right? He was like, I'm moving to the Norfolk area. I'm in the Navy. I want to buy a house and rent out the rooms, do exactly what you're saying. And I said, fantastic. Let's get started. So we got him pre-approved. We sold him the house. But when we sold that house, this was probably about January of 2022. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to touch a penny of this commission, and I'm going to figure out how to advertise effectively as an agent and take this business full time. After my first deal, I made the commitment. I'm not going to touch a single penny of this commission. I'm going to go buy leads. I'm going to go buy marketing. That's exactly where I reinvested back into the company. And by April, I submitted my 2 weeks notice and I was full time because I had an entire pipeline of leads that made me just as much money in 2 months as I made as about half of what I would make in the entire year at the shipyard. So in 6 months at the shipyard, I would make the exact same amount as I did in 2 months as an agent. And that was when I was like, okay, time to go. Pulled the cord, left the shipyard, sold those houses, and just kept reinvesting back into the company to grow it bigger and bigger.
You blew through this real quick, but I want to lock in on one thing you said. You got your license in June of 21, July, in that neighborhood. You went 6 months with nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
How many agents throw in the towel and go back to just grinding at the shipyard at 5 months, 4 months, most?
I would say if I were to throw a number on it, I would expect that number to be about 60%.
You got through 6 months, all the grinding and stuff like that, finally had one payoff. How many agents get that payoff and go buy a new car with it?
I would say 95%.
Right.
Yeah.
You took it and now you got the W-2 income, so it was comfortable to do this, but you took all that money and instead of bumping up your lifestyle for whatever, amount you made, you dumped it into more action, right? You had a plan and you said, I'm going to trust that these KPIs, these actions, these marketing strategies are going to show results. And then by April, you're putting in your 2 weeks. So literally in less than a year, you got through that, the rough patch that most people quit in, 6 months. That's when most people quit, is under 6 months of anything if they're not getting results. You grinded through that. At that point, and the reason I'm harping on this, because I know that this is where most people they never see the real results of what they're capable of because of quitting, essentially, or mismanaging the results when they get them. You not only didn't quit, you managed the results initially really well to lead to better results. How committed were you in that 6 month time frame when it wasn't working out and you weren't getting much? How much longer do you think you would have grinded?
Quite honestly, I think I would have kept going. Me personally, I would have kept going even if it wasn't successful for at least 2 years. Because you would have
tweaked whatever you were doing along the way until something popped, right?
Yes, I would have, because I was so motivated to get out of the position that I was in. I was that motivated. I mean, every single day I got off at 3:30. I closed the Shipyard laptop because luckily it was a work from home position, which was fantastic. It was during COVID, stuff like that. At 3:30, the Shipyard laptop closed. My real estate laptop opened. I was working from 3:30 to 8 every single day in real estate, trying to make content, connect with people, stuff like that, sending out mailers. I was trying everything. I was investing into the business. I didn't have too much money at the time until my first commission check. And then I had an idea of where to put that money. But another thing that really helped along this route is I had actually met my now wife. We started dating probably around the same time. It was about the same time I got my license. And one of the things that I told her straight up was, I have this real estate dream. It's going to take a lot of time. I'm doing it for my future and my future family. So there will be days that I cancel dates with you. There will be days I need to go on showings instead of taking you out to the wine festival. And she said, that sounds good to me. You're putting our future above comfort. And I was like, great. So I do think that there's that aspect you have to consider as well, is you need to have those open and honest conversations if you're looking to make a drastic change with your significant other. Because one thing that I've always believed in, your most important business partner is the partner you have at home. If you don't have their support, it's going to bleed into other areas of your life.
Yeah. A lot of folks are listening, and I know this, that are thinking, well, that's easy for Chris to say, because at that point he was 22, 23 years old, didn't have kids, and he still had time to make mistakes. All that's true, and that's great.
Yep.
I can tell Chris would have done this as a 40-year-old as well if he had that light bulb and read the right books and stuff like that. But I don't want to make this about me, but for the folks that are thinking that, my light bulb didn't really go off till I was in my upper 30s. I had 2 kids. I had a big mortgage. I had a big paying career. I had all these things, and still, without compromising too much my family time, was still able to, at lunchtime, open up the real estate laptop, send out offers, do all my thing, put the kids to sleep at night. Now it's 10:30 at night. For the next 2 hours, I'm going to do my real estate stuff and fit it in. So to say, I don't have the time, I have kids, I want to be present. I never missed a ball game. I still haven't, of my kids. I coach their stuff. My wife coaches my daughter's stuff. It can be done if, and you talked about this when we kind of a little bit earlier, you time block. You control your calendar in a way that allows you to have these times to throw out the offers if you're just trying to real estate invest, or if you want to start as an agent, make the marketing connections and do all that. There's time. Real estate doesn't sleep. You can do that in the middle of the night. You can do it, find blocks of time where the kids are taking naps and stuff like that. I mean, you can do this. So that excuse, which I hear all the time, I've got kids and I don't want to do this. You don't have to compromise a thing. Just pick up your phone, open up your screen time app, and look how much time you've spent on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that stuff. And 90% of that time is not productive time. And it's usually, for most people, 4 hours a day. Knock that down to an hour a day and find 3 hours. Now you've just given yourself 3 hours to be productive in something. So I'm getting on my soapbox here. Sorry about that.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. Let me ask you, did you have any kind of expectation setting or conversations with your wife when you were going into it? Like, hey, this really matters to me. I think this is going to be good for our future. How did that go when you went to go address her about
your situation? Yeah, so it went early. I mean, before we were even married. So we got married in, I don't want to get this wrong, 2009. I had to think back, but we got married in 2009, so almost 17 years. But I was well on my way in my corporate career, and we had dated and were engaged for a while. But leading up to all that, she knew that I had a hustler's mentality. Not hustler in the sense I just want to grind and work all the time, but I like trying to make things and build things and whatever. So she knew that about me. And our first 5 years of marriage, we moved 6 times. Not because we were upgrading houses. We were doing live-in fix and flips. We didn't have, my daughter came during that period too, which kind of slowed things down. You know, you don't want to be moving so much, but we got married and we lived in a brand new, I just built a new construction home, and I convinced her right then, we hadn't lived there hardly a few months, 1800s old farmhouse in my county came up for sale, or it wasn't for sale, it was a client of mine that had passed away and their family needed to sell it. And I convinced her, we're going to move out of this house that we just built. We're going to sell it. And we're going to move into a house that's basically inhabitable, because I know if we get in there, do a lot of the work ourselves, we don't have kids yet, let's just get off work and go sand floors and paint, do all that, that this is going to make us enough money to roll into the next one, ultimately to buy us a farm to build our dream house on. So she could see that vision and she bought into it. So we did that. And after six-ish years, we were at a point where we bought that farm. It was about 20 acres. And then we built our house in 2015 that we're in today. So she, early on, before I got, later, probably around 2017 is when I started doing the BRRRR strategy and really building up a portfolio. But she had already seen my vision kind of play out, and she was a part of it. So after that, I really didn't have to sell her on much. She just trusted that it was always, I trust what you're doing as long as you're still around, right? You're not just gone all the time traveling or in meetings all the time, stuff like that. So I did have to balance that, but I've been able to do so pretty good so far. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, the balancing thing has been tricky for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I'm part of a coaching program with my brokerage and team lead stuff. And one of the things that my coach actually got on me was wife time.
Yep.
So there is a certain time, and this goes back to the time blocking stuff. Like you have to make time for your passions, your business, everything like that. You need to make time for your family too, right? And so that was one of the things he got on me, and he said, hey, 7:30, that laptop's closed every single day. That is wife time. That is not business time.
I'm sure that and I'm sure your coach would say this if you dug into it. Y'all probably have a little bit deeper, but when I left my corporate career in 2022, that whole career, I was just led by my calendar, right? That job just kind of led my calendar, and I would fit the real estate stuff in where I could, and then I would fit the family stuff in. So they kind of came third on the list, and I was managing it, but it was pure chaos. When I left that job, I saw a presentation at an event I was at where the lady was kind of presenting how she structures her calendar. And she's a big real estate CEO, but she walked us through an exercise of how she looks week to week at her calendar. So she looks at it as a clean slate, and she's going to plug in all the top priority things first. Top priority means husband, kids, health, so workouts, friends, stuff like that. And she fills the calendar up with that stuff. And then the gaps get all the business stuff. Now that's hard because you're thinking, God, I need more time than that. But I started doing that, and I do it to this day. It changed my life. And what I found, I think most people would find this, when I box myself into a certain amount of time to get a business task done, I am laser focused, and I'm 10 times more productive than saying, all right, Wednesday, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to get it done, but I'm going to take all day to do it. If I say Wednesday from 1 to 3, I'm going to do that same X, Y, Z. Not only am I going to do it, I'm going to do it a lot more laser focused and be more productive. So taking that approach of scheduling workouts, scheduling date nights, scheduling time with the kids, putting all the games and stuff on the calendar, and then filling the gaps in with those time blocks for business focus has changed my life. Everything, and I'm way more productive with the business. So.
Absolutely. I do the same thing with my scheduling.
Yeah. It's hard though, because you...
It can be tough. It sure can.
So let's talk. All right. So now you're a real estate agent. You got it popping. It's going. At one point, did your mindset? I'm sure you're an entrepreneur. You were thinking like this all along. But when does it go from I'm going to start a team, or I'm going to just sell as much as I can, to I'm going to build a team around this model? Where did that happen?
I am so glad that you brought this up right after the time scheduling and
Okay.
time. So the biggest thing was I was working 7 days a week for anywhere between 60 to 80 hours a week, and my work was dragging me. I was the decision maker for almost every single task that was in my pipeline, and stuff could not get done without me being involved in the business at every single level. That was one of the biggest things. I had a transaction coordinator at the time, but I didn't have showing agents. I didn't have agents to help me out with the buyers, and every single thing that was happening in my business, I had to be involved with all the time, from all the way from the client stuff, all the way to the high level accounting, everything. And I said, okay, I need to figure out how to let go of some of the control, which has actually proven to be a very difficult task for me. I'm very much of a control freak. I like a certain level of service to be provided at every level. And I've had to find out how to hire people and effectively put them into that position. But long story short, the team came up as a result of me working in every single aspect of the business and saying, this is not sustainable. And back to my original goal, I'm doing this for my future family. And I would not be able to be present for my future family unless I learned how to delegate and build a system that isn't relying on me for every single step of the process. That's where the team really came in.
So that I mean, you articulated that perfectly. Where has that evolved? So what does the team look like now? And at what point did, like, I found it fascinating hearing David Greene, who wasn't able to physically make it to our event, but he did take some Q&A over Zoom the other day. But he mentioned, like, he couldn't go coast to coast, with his brokerage until he found the boots on the ground that he could trust to take his brand and run with it. So where did that connection and where did that part come along during the journey?
Where the whole coast to coast relationship between me and David?
Yeah. At some point, like, David didn't seek you out. I would, unless he saw you or heard you somewhere. So how did that evolve? I would imagine you're going to say it's through some type of action you took.
Yep.
And then it evolved, which your whole story is that way. But walk us through that, because I think it should be inspirational to folks.
For sure. So very early on in the business, I was told by a realtor up in Richmond. I don't know why this stuck with me. I don't think he's a realtor anymore, but it stuck with me. You need to meet as many new people as you can in a day to be as productive as possible in this business. I was like, okay, cool, meet people. That's what I took from it. Your job is to meet people, network with them, show them you care, get, genuinely interested in them. Always, coming from kind of a servant background. Trying to look for the word here, but like, you're trying to service people and find out their problems and fix them without them asking. That's kind of the way that I've run my business the entire time. I actually had a friend back, my best friend all the way back from high school. When I bought my house and we had this sewer line issue, I told him, hey, we've got this issue and we need to do some digging, or I need to do some digging. And he said, great, sounds good. What time do you need me open?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I didn't even ask for the help, but he immediately came up to me and I was like, I need to figure out some way to, give back to him. So I took the same type of thing that drove him to help me into my business. And that's why I've handled all of my client interactions. Now, how that transfers over to how I got involved with David was he was doing Instagram lives. So about a year and a half ago, he was separating out from Bigger Pockets and starting his own podcast and going on with a couple new ventures and stuff. He went on Instagram Live one day and he's just talking and he says, I'm thinking about starting a brokerage. Is anybody in the chat a real estate broker? And I just happened to be on that Instagram Live that one day and typed in, I'm studying to get my broker's license right now. I was in the business for about 3 years at the time, had some pretty decent success. I was applying for my broker's license because I was like, this is going to be the next step. I just know when it's going to be the right step for me to step into the broker side of things. But I knew it was in the future, so I was just knocking it out. And sure enough, he responds back and says, hey, well, send me an email at this email and let's chat. And it was as simple as that. Because I was so confident in making sure that I was getting involved in other people's lives, offering help, and coming from like a servant mentality, and my job was to meet people and be liked, that all culminated in me being on the Instagram live, contributing to him. I had been commenting on his stuff all up until then, building that kind of like, hey, I kind of know this Chris guy. He's commenting on a lot of my stuff. And finally, he said, I'm looking for a broker, and I raised my hand. So I was like, he needs help with this. Let me raise my hand. I'll help with that. Sure enough, we started going, through a couple of interviews. And after about a year, I was selected to lead the Virginia coast to coast brokerage. And now we're working on North Carolina and Tennessee right now.
Amazing. Yeah, and that, again, I knew it, but it came back to you taking some action. You were on the Instagram live, right? You probably didn't make every live, but you were on that one. You saw an opportunity to provide value, right? You didn't respond to that like, oh, let me fish and see if he'll take the bait. That was, he asked a question, let me give him the answer. This is an honest answer. I am not a broker, but I'm studying to get my brokerage license. Yep. This is what you asked for. I'm putting it out there. How many people on that Instagram live had those same thoughts, just didn't take the action?
Yep.
You were the one that took the action. And I beat this horse. So I beat it with everybody I talk to, even my own kids, like, just take action. Like, it's hard because it's scary, and that's not a scary scenario, but what if he doesn't respond? What if he, tells you to kick rocks? You're not a broker yet, something like that. All those things could have happened. You said, no, he asked a question, I'm going to answer it. And there you go. So, and now that clearly has opened a door for you, like you said, to keep, growing what you've done. So I talked to one thing we do in our lending business. We do a lot of like lunch and learns for real estate brokerages and stuff like that. My goal is, obviously it's marketing for our business as well, but I genuinely, and this goes back to what you say, I walk into every room trying to figure out not just where I can extract value, but mostly where I can provide value, right? And because it always comes back. I don't care. And even if it doesn't, oh well, at some point it will. But I talked to a lot of real estate agents, and I'm surprised at how many are not only not working with many investor clients, folks that are flipping houses or doing the BRRRR strategy or whatever. Hold on one second, Chris. Lisa? Chris, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Lisa, I have a podcast right after this, and she popped in early, so we'll edit all that out.
No worries.
Sorry about that. But how many real estate agents do not, like, they don't have a desire to work with investor clients, nor do they want to, because they think it's a waste of time, right? Oh, they only buy 1 out of 20 offers they make, and these are dumpy houses and stuff like that. You're a real estate investor too. So, and you're a real estate broker and agent. So give me some of your thoughts about, and this is what I tell agents all the time, y'all are in the best position to not only be an investor yourself, but to help investors and be a part of their team, which will, if you provide that value in the right way, it's going to come back to you tenfold. What's your perspective on that?
So my perspective on that, you can be a successful agent without working with investors. I've seen it done a couple of times. I know a couple agents that do.
Yeah.
However, working with investors has been the reason I took my business full time. I specialized in working with a house hack and live and flip investor strategy. That was my buyer pool. It's what I advertised to the entire time. And the best part of that is I had to build up a smaller client base to have the same results as some of my colleagues that are working with retail buyers, because their clientele is buying and selling a home once every 7 to 11 years. My clientele ideally is at least buying a house a year. So I don't have to have nearly as large of a clientele. My flippers are doing multiple deals a year. Some of my buy and hold investors are buying multiple deals a year. So if you're able to get into the investment space in real estate, you can really supercharge your business. Yes, you have to learn a couple new skills. But if you want to be a successful business owner, I don't like the excuses of, oh, I don't like working with investors because there's so much work. Well, this is real estate brokerage. It's going to be a lot of work. Choose the work you want to do.
Right.
It's going to be more work for a client that's going to transact on average 1 to 4 homes every single year, as opposed to one person's going to transact a home once every 7 to 11 years.
Yeah.
That's the trade-off. It's going to be more work, but you're going to have recurring business, and you don't have to keep up with as large of a buyer and seller pool. So
Every once in a
excuse.
while, yeah, it is for sure an excuse. But every once in a while, the ones that are buying 2 to 4 a year, they pop off and figure out they build a system where they're buying 20 a year, 40 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have been a part of that journey with them early on, providing them, bringing them pocket listings and good deals where you see opportunities and whatnot, you think they're going to leave you? No, you're going to be listing every flip they do. A lot of the deal transactions you do with them are going to be 2 hits. You're going to sell them something on the front end, and then you're going to be the one listing it on the back end. And I'll share a really good example in our world. I'm not an agent, but when we first really started ramping up the BRRRR strategy, and we were flipping houses too, we were working our corporate jobs, my partner and I, but we needed to link up with an agent and we told him, find us deals, whether it's on the MLS or off market or whatever, just bring them to us, and we're going to offer 20 offers a week, right? Well, that's a lot of work for that agent. And we didn't buy that many. We were getting rejected a lot. And over time, he kept doing it, kept submitting the offers for us. And every once in a while, we'd buy one and we'd do the BRRRR strategy, and then we'd move on to the next one, or we'd flip it and he'd list it on the back end. Fast forward over about a 5-year period of aggressively doing this, we scaled pretty quickly with this. But we did the math, and then talking to him, in that 5 years, he made over $300,000 in commissions just off of our transactions, because we started doing bigger deals, more deals, higher volume, started flipping more, so he would get the commission on the buy side and the sale side. So the point is, for agents that are listening that are just, and sometimes broker instruct their agents not to deal with investor clients, but
they do. I've seen it.
Right. Why not? Right? And not everyone's going to blow up, but the more, goes back to what you were saying, the more people you meet, the more connections you make, the more chance of you having to provide more value and reap the rewards that come along with that. So,
yeah. And not only that, there's one thing that I do with my business that I view as providing value to investors. I take pride in telling my investors it's not a good purchase.
yeah.
So a lot of agents will sell every house they walk into. I don't believe that, and I don't train my agents to do that either. If you don't think it's a good fit, tell the client, hey, we can do better than this.
Yep.
This property is a ticking time bomb, and it's not worth your attention. Because also, when you're working with investors, if you can position them correctly into profitable investments, they become a more valuable client. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So your agent that made $300,000 in commissions over 5 years didn't do that by selling you bad investments. I'm sure there were a couple in there that he was like, hey, look, this one really, it doesn't matter what you offer on this one. This is going to be a huge waste of time. It's going to draw you away from other projects, X, Y, Z. That's who you want in your corner. You want an agent that talks you away from deals that they think could be a liability to you. But at the end of the day, if you still want to submit that offer, they still will. But they will voice their opinion. They won't just let you flop on your face. That has led me into some of my most profitable clients that I have, in terms of, I have clients that started in the house hacking space that we are negotiating commercial offers for today on apartment complexes, right?
Right.
Because there were a couple of deals that they walked into that I can think of right off the top of my head that would not have been good deals to set them up long term. I told them, hey, we can do better than this. They bought those properties 3-4 years ago, and now today I'm working with one of them that bought a duplex in Norfolk, and he is currently looking at almost a 30-unit complex today.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. And not only telling them to walk away, but also finding value that nobody else really sees on houses. And,
yes.
And one good example, like our agent, this is one of the first ones we bought under the BRRRR strategy. It was a foreclosure in Colonial Heights, Virginia.
Yep.
And it was like 1,200, 1,300 square feet, but listed as a 2-1. And everybody was comping it as a 2-1. And he said, man, I've been in the house. There's enough room. There's this like weird space in the middle. You close it in, put a closet. It's a 3-1 now. It's already, permitted for the right septic and everything. Nobody's looking at it that way. Here's the ARV if you bought it that way and turn it into that. I think we can go in above everybody else's offer, still have plenty of meat, and this might work. And sure enough, it worked out beautifully. We got the house and put a 3rd bedroom in there. The appraisal came back great. Did the burst strategy, got all my money back, and it's a great rental.
That's absolutely what you need to do. You need to have an agent in your corner that's looking on ways to add value. Also, things that won't add much value to the property. Like, for example, one of the conversations we have that comes to mind quite often is older looking windows. Replacing your windows is going to be incredibly expensive and is not always worth the payoff, right? So having an agent that can tell you, hey, in this area, these windows are just fine. Spruce them up, clean them up, get a fresh coat of paint on them if they're the old wood windows. But look, that house right across the street, the 2 ones next to it, and your neighbors all have the same stuff. It's unnecessary to drop $11,000 into putting new windows into this house. Use that money somewhere else. That's the kind of agent you need in your corner, telling you what to do, what not to do, and just voicing their opinion. It may not be what you like to do. Like, you may like someone that's just a yes person, but there's a lot more value in someone that's going to tell you, hey, this isn't worth you spending your money on. I'd rather have someone tell me that.
Oh yeah, and I ignored that on a couple early ones. We bought a lot of property in Hopewell, Virginia, which is a very big rental market. And one in particular I bought, it was a full gut rehab, and I told the contractor I want everything, tile, backsplash, hardwood floors, everything's. And the contractor said to me, man, look at every house on this street. Like, this is not going to bring you more rent or appraisal value by doing this. But I was so hell-bent on, like, I want mine to be the best house on this neighborhood. Well, it backfired. I spent all this money and I didn't get any more rent than the neighbor's house that was the floors falling in, right? Yep. And I ignored that knowledge. So to your point, pay attention to the folks that, your real estate agent, your contractors and stuff like that to know what they're talking about. Chris, this has been, I've got pages full of questions and notes. So I do want to run this back in some format as we go on, because I want to get more into the tactics of what you're doing and what you're building. So we will have a round 2. But I think we've gone on enough for folks to really, if nothing else, find some inspiration to take some action, because you're living proof of that. With that said, I'm gonna give you the floor to kind of wrap it up, and I want you to do so more so from you're 27.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. There's a bunch of there's a lot of folks listening. A bunch of folks are just stuck. They are stuck at the shipyard, at whatever corporate career they're running in. They have all the knowledge. They know what to do. They know that, but they just haven't done it. Speak to that person, elevator pitch them to take the next step. And what should that step be?
Absolutely. Well, identify where you want to go and then keep it simple. Like I said, when it came to my first deal, my guy said, go buy something that you can do X, Y, Z. So I did it. What is that one step that you can take today to get you closer to your goal? Accomplish that. Then tomorrow, what is one more step that I can take? And think of making sure that these things get you one step closer to that end goal. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Identify one thing that you can do today that gets you closer. Do the same thing tomorrow. Do the same thing the next day, and keep on repeating. Every single day, just get yourself one step closer, and you'll see success before you can even think about it. It's going to happen.
I love it. So where can folks go to learn more about you if they're interested in getting into real estate themselves, becoming an agent, being a part of what you're building? What's the best way folks can reach out to you?
People can reach out to me on my Instagram. My Instagram is Chris Lloyd _real estate, and Lloyd is spelled LLOYD. So again, that's on Instagram at Chris Lloyd _real estate, or you can shoot me an email at chris.lloyd at clret.com.
All right, we're going to link all that in the show notes as well for folks that weren't able to jot that down. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor. I just love stories like this. You know, folks that are just taking action and proving what everybody says to be true. You're actually living proof of it, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. Look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you, and let's do some business together. So
let's do it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, Chris.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.